Welcome to Backstage with Richard Ridge. My guest is known to millions of TV fans for his role of Blake Moran on the hit series Madam Secretary. He made his Broadway debut as Dr. Pomander in the hit musical Waitress. He is also known for playing Bob Gaudio on the tour in Las Vegas and in Clint Eastwood's film version of the iconic musical Jersey Boys. Well, now he has just stepped into the role of lawyer Billy Flynn in Broadway's longest-running American musical, Chicago, through September 11th. Please say hello to my friend, Erich Bergen.
Hi, how are you?
How are you, my friend? First off, how are you and where are you?
I'm here. I'm here in my apartment here in New York City. You are clearly standing at Triton Gallery. It's so lovely to see that you're there. We were comparing our show posters. I'm good. I'm good. All is good. I just started this run in Chicago. I am kind of overwhelmed and inspired and all of those things, and just figuring out how to stretch all over again, and all those Broadway things that I had to get back on quickly with 2 weeks notice. But great, I'm doing great. It feels great to be doing this again, and great to talk to you.
Yeah, because I mean, you're back on Broadway in the iconic Candor and Ebb, I call it the Bob Fosse and Ryan King musical, Chicago. I mean, how excited are you to be back doing this?
It's so exciting, Broadway, to perform on Broadway in general. But I think for this show, what's more iconic Broadway than this? I mean, I almost feel like there's a rite of passage to be in it. Like you did your time in Chicago as well. I mean, it really is. It's an incredible group of people. It's a show that I've fallen more in love with and found a new appreciation for, having been through the rehearsal process for. Um, and it's also very special to me because I forgot all about this until I got into the theater. But I used to sell T-shirts at the Ambassador Theater when I was a teenager in like 2002, 2003, somewhere around there. I used to sell T-shirts at Chicago just a few times. I sold T-shirts mostly at Wicked and at the Bernadette Peters version of Gypsy, but I did do a few nights at Chicago. So it was great to remember all that and think, wow, that's kind of a journey from the merch counter to the stage. And it's been great. It's been so fun to sing this music, and it's also one of those things, you think you know the song, but you don't when you get in with Rob Bowman, the music director, and you start to really learn it. You think the notes are but it's really and having to relearn things that are so stuck in your head for so long. And the number Both Reach for the Gun. I've seen that number. We've all seen that song for so long. We've all seen photographs of that number. Roxy sitting on Billy's knee and him kind of with the arm up as the puppeteer, and all the cast surrounding them with their notepads as the press. And it's such an iconic moment that I know so well. And then I had this moment in the first performance. I looked down and it was me in the costume, and it was me doing it. It was a very surreal, out of body experience, but I love it and I'm very grateful for it. And it's just so much fun. It's so much fun.
All right, let's talk about Billy. What an iconic role, Billy Flynn. I mean, the first time you saw yourself in your dressing room, in that tuxedo, in your outfit, like, were you like, oh my gosh, I'm doing Chicago, or look at me?
Yeah, it was interesting because I didn't get the costume on until the first day of the show. I had my put in, and then that afternoon, and then we did the show that night. But that was the first time I had done it with the costumes and all of the lights and the cast. I had just been in a rehearsal room with two a dance captain and a stage manager, two people playing all the roles. Now I got on stage, costume, actors, lights, it all hit at once. And you think to yourself, well, I'm a professional. I can handle this. I can do this. We've been in weirder situations before. And let me tell you something, it's nerve-wracking. I think for the first time in my career, I had a, oh my God, what am I doing moment? And I never have those. I mean, you know me, I thrive off of the unknown and the the live experience. When I do my concerts, I love all that. But when you've learned a show in 2 weeks and it hasn't gone to a full body process yet, and it's still just right here, but you know that every single person on that stage knows the show so much better than you do. It's a lot. But Billy in particular it's a deliciously fun role to play with, and it's been really fun getting to go back into the script and kind of take apart lines and, well, why does he say that, and what it's fantastic. What was funny was the amount of people that said to me, either right before they saw me do it or right after they saw me do it, they would say, well, there's who could be more perfectly cast for this part than you. And I get what they mean, right? Because there is this kind of like Vegas showman thing to it. And then I would have people come up to me and also say, and so, when I heard you were doing this part, I thought that is so wrong. He is someone last night said to me, I never thought of you as so macho, but you did it. I was like, well, thank you. It's very kind. But and I get what they mean too, right? Like Billy really is this kind of he really is a villain, and in a lot of ways. And this is the first real villain I've played, so that was also interesting. I don't know. I'm just having a blast with it, and I love that there's only one costume. No costume changes here.
Okay, I have spoken to so many Billies who say you have one of the most iconic entrances in this show, but it's also very scary because don't you enter in the dark, you're hit by a spotlight, and all these other Billies said, Richard, I could not see the stairs. So explain to people like Billy's entrance and that first time what you saw, and could you maneuver the stairs?
Yes. So the backs if you know, the set of Chicago is just a giant bandstand that the orchestra sits on, and there's a couple of different holes in the set where you can make entrances and exits out of. The backstage part of that under the shell is all black carpeting with pieces of glow tape here and there so that you can kind of get where you are and where you need to be. But that spotlight, it's an old-fashioned Broadway spot. It's just bam, it's on you. And it's old-fashioned entrances. You run up and go, ba-da, and it hits you. And I had that exact, I didn't know that was going to happen. But what you are saying is absolutely true. You are kind of, you see the stairs in front of you and you go to run up. But as soon as that spotlight catches you, you are blinded, and you're just, by the grace of God, you try to remember how many steps you're supposed to take until you reach the top. And the other part is some of those exits are very low. I'm 6'3", so there's a lot of like graceful exits, and then right at the last minute, it's like that ducking to get through. But yes, it's a lot of scary entrances. I also said at the put-in, this was kind of, it's interesting you brought this up. The way the show is lit, it's very dark and sexy, and there are these light trees on the side of the show that kind of catch everyone from like here up. And I had this weird out-of-body experience where I was on stage and it felt like my body ended here. Like I didn't know what was going on down below. I felt like this floating head because at first, I mean, again, I was thrown out there, costumes, lights, all at once, just trying to like figure it out for yourself, kid. It was all safe. I don't mean to scare anyone, but it's scary. I mean, I really felt like a floating head. I was like, just somebody point me where to go. And thankfully the cast is so kind and understanding that for the put-in and for the first two shows, there was a lot of like delicate hand on my back, like pushing me in one direction or another. And thank God for them. But it's scary.
No, because every Billy has told me, said, Richie, it's the best entrance ever. But you're coming out of a black cocoon, you get hit by the spotlight, and you're like, I can't see the stairs. And you got to go, hey,
you cannot see the stairs. And also, once you have to climb up the stairs to get to the top, but then you have to walk down them. And
that's
thank
the ones
God,
I'm talking about.
Yes. And thank God they're carpeted, but you're like, hello, big entrance. And then, I mean, I'm still in look down mode. I need another week before I dare make the descending the stairs without looking down. Maybe 2 weeks.
You will, but like I said, some Billies get to shadow Billies. Did you shadow anybody or no?
No, I never shadowed. I watched the show a lot, but I never shadowed from backstage. It's so tight back there that I thought, and with COVID restrictions and all, I thought let them, I just want to let them have their show, and I'll figure it out. And I have figured it out, but I still go to work every day with like, uh,
No, but that excitement of live theater too, and there's no
yeah.
better show than Chicago. So I was going to ask you, what is it like living in the world of Chicago? It's one of the most iconic musicals. I mean, it's 25 years it's celebrating. It's the longest running American musical in Broadway history. It's Candor and Ebb.
I'll tell you what my best story is. I was watching the show the week before I went into it, and I've gone into the show with my friend Charity playing Mama Morton, and she and I did Waitress together, and I mean, my God, she's unbelievable. And we were standing in the back of the house watching the show one night, and these four women they were young women, like early 20s, mid 20s, and they were stunning, and they were dressed beautifully, and they were dressed in outfits that you don't see people come to the theater in anymore. And Charity and I looked at each other like, wow, this is so great. I mean, we actually were so compelled to turn to them, and we said, we just have to say, you guys look amazing. Where are you from? And it turns out they were four girls from Ireland, and this was the first time they'd ever been to New York, and this was the first Broadway show they had ever seen. I said, "Are you seeing anything else?" And she said, "No, this is the show we've been wanting to see forever. This is the only show we're seeing." And they were in awe. They were taking pictures of the theater and the proscenium and the ceiling of the back of the orchestra, every little nook and cranny of the experience they were experiencing, taking photos with each other, and they were just dressed like, a night out. And she saw that I was holding my script, and she said, "Do you work here?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "You get to see this every night? That's the most amazing thing ever." And Sherry and I were so kind of emotionally struck by it, because this is one of those shows that, for whatever reason, and there are a million of them, it has survived the test of time. It sadly gets more relevant. You can't beat the songs, and you can't beat the experience, all in all. And we were so moved in that moment that 25 years later, it's not a stale piece of things that people are walking through. It's a show that continues to give people their gateway drug to Broadway. And that is a very touching thing to be a part of, that we are a small part of this legacy that continues to shine. When Barry Weissler offered me the part, the first thing I said to my agent is, I'm going to go see this thing before I say yes, because I don't know what shape this thing is. Because, long running shows, you don't know what shape it's in. I got to tell you, I saw it. I happened to see it the night that was Jennifer Holliday's first night back, her opening night this past summer. It felt fresher to me than it did when I saw it when I worked there. It's crisp and fresh and brassy and sexy and young, and also like just those arrangements. I mean, the horn section on stage that's just swinging, and it's very, very visceral, and I experience it every night as both a performer and an audience member. Because when you're backed by that orchestra and you're backed by all those incredible dancers, you feel like a participant and an audience member. And it's all of this. It's very emotionally overwhelming. You think, my God, it just works and continues to work, and I get to be a part of it. It's just great. It's just great.
Because I go back to Chicago at least once a year. And like I said, I went back a few weeks ago. The show looks like it just opened yesterday. I mean,
Right.
seriously, it's in such great shape. The vitality, the people in the show, like I said, it looks, like I said, it's a gateway for a lot of people. The nice thing about Chicago is you don't have to speak English to understand it, because the songs tell the whole story. And it's so beautifully visually directed and choreographed that you can follow the story even if you don't speak English.
And you know, it's interesting you say that because I remember in hearing about, you know, Chicago through the years. There's this ongoing joke in the Broadway community, as I'm sure you know, about like, oh, you know, if you go to see Broadway, you're going to be the only English speaking people in the audience. And once you're in the show, that joke, that's not actually true, but it starts to become a good thing. You go, yeah, we're reaching the world. You know, this show, because of its life and legacy, and people love it, and because it's been so smartly produced over the years with putting in different talents in different parts, it has such a global reach. I mean, why would you not want to be a part of that? And it really is. I mean, people come into the show, they don't speak English, and they are standing at the end of the show screaming for it. I think that's the biggest gift of all. I mean, it really is. It's an international, beloved piece of art, and that is a tribute to, of course, Annie and Walter Bobby and Bob Fosse and Kander and Ebb, and including its original stars that kind of helped figure out, you know, what the show was. You know, people like BB, people like it for the revival, and Jerry Orbach in the original. It's also a big testament to people like David Bushman and Greg Butler and the stage managers who keep the show up and running. They keep the show up and running with such a passion for the piece that they the reason why it looks so good and still has such life is because there's very little strict rules. It's when people come into the show is very malleable to who goes into the show. You know, when we started to work on my version of Razzle Dazzle, we would get to a section of the dance, and David would say, you know, okay, what are you comfortable doing at this part? And I'd always ask, okay, well, what did Usher do at that part? And he'd explain. He'd go, oh, he'd do a twirl and he'd do a thing and he'd throw his hat over and add 8 bars of music. And it would be the same for like Tony Yazbek. And then I'd say, okay, what did Jerry Springer do? And he would say, Jerry just stood there and the girls danced around him. I said, I'd like something in the middle. And that's what we did. You know, it's very malleable to the people that did. You know, obviously when Pam Anderson went into the show, and everyone said she was so fantastic in it. And I'm sure it's because they made the show work for her, what she was comfortable doing. And so I think the reason why the show really continues to feel so fresh is because they're constantly working on it. They're constantly making it work for who's in it and making it work for the audience that night. Last night we had a performance where, because the trains are so up and down in New York right now, they're so weird. Someone in the ensemble missed the opening number because the trains got screwed up. This cast, like that, said, I got it, I'll do this, and he jumped right in. By the end of all that jazz, he was on stage and in the show. I mean, it's that everyone's so talented that that can just happen. I'm still trying to figure out how to walk downstairs. They've got the rest figured out.
Believe me, I have people already seen you in this show, and they say you're terrific in this, and your entrance is amazing, my friend.
Thank you.
You know, talk about your Velma and your Roxy. Who do you have now? Who's going in with you?
Well, I'm doing it with, you know, Bianca, who has done it for a long time on and off, and my God, she's incredible. And Lana Gordon is my Velma. And the iconic Charlotte Demois comes back starting next week, which is, you know, I've only heard the greatest things about her, but my God, for me, it's like, I get to do, you really, I'm going to do this with her? You really want me to do? Okay, all right. I mean, if there's one person who could play every single role in Chicago, it's probably her. So, and including my role, much better than I ever could. So the pressure is definitely on for me. But the Rocks, and you know, because of what's going on in the world right now, there are understudies and swings on all the time for Roxy's and Velma's. It's just the nature of the business right now. And they're incredible. I mean, I've had people come to the show already who have seen understudies go on for Velma. It's, people don't know. I mean, it's the talent that is leaking from this stage in every capacity. It's kind of overwhelming.
It's very exciting because understudies and standbys are the unsung heroes of Broadway. It's them because they don't know sometimes at a moment's notice if they're going to go on to get the show on in the first place. And every show is electrifying. Everything on Broadway right now is so electrifying. Everybody's living in their moments, and it's a very, very exciting time.
It is, and it's there is an excitement because of this kind of new respect or newfound or broader respect for our understudies and swings. It's very exciting because it when somebody goes on for a lead role, moves up in that lead role for that night, there is an excitement in the air. You know, it used to be that you knew the audience would not be on their side, but the cast backstage would be cheering them on. Now everyone cheers them on, and it's a very, very exciting. It's a very, very exciting time to go see a Broadway show because every night is you don't know what you're getting. I mean, you're getting something good, but it's wild.
Because I know people are like, oh, I'm going back to see this show again because this person's on. I'm going back again. And I hear regular people, like my family from Long Island, they're like, I'm going back to see this other person again because they were so great. You know, you're talking about Broadway. Broadway debuts, so many people are making their Broadway debuts finally because, you know, we came out of the pandemic. Broadway debuts are really special. They only happen once. Yours was Dr. Palmer in Sarah Bareilles' musical Waitress. I mean, how magical was your debut and what do you remember?
Um, I was obsessed with the show from very beginning when because I was such a fan of Sarah's writing, and I knew Jesse Mueller. We did a show together many years ago in Chicago, and Drew Gehling is one of my dearest friends, and I think and the combo of all of those people working together. I just was like pre-obsessed with the show before I had heard any bit of it. So I drove to Cambridge to ART to go see Waitress out of town, and like most people, cried my way through 2 hours of the musical from the first downbeat. And I remember at the time I was already involved with Madam Secretary, so I couldn't I couldn't really do any theater at the time. But with TV, you never know if you're going to get another season or not. So I'd always kind of in the back of my mind looking to see what's going on, what's out there, what would I like to do. And Waitress was like number one, obsessed with from the beginning. And so when an opportunity came up, that Drew texted me and he said, "Hey, heads up, producers don't know, but I'm leaving Waitress. You should come do it." And it worked out perfectly from when there was a break in Madam Secretary between seasons. But there, once we started to get into it in terms of the actual dates, there was an overlap of about a month. And I thought, oh, this is never going to work because Madam Secretary is not going to let me, do this. But because of Mark Sachs, the casting director at Madam Secretary and many other shows, who is such a Broadway champion, and because we had just such incredible producers on that show, they made it work. And I got to debut in Waitress in the summer of 17 or 18, 18, with my dear Kat McPhee, who was just, was also, that was a Broadway debut for her. And she kind of just electrified Broadway that summer. I mean, she was so brilliant in that role. And we just had a blast. And she's become a lifelong friend from that show. And we're working on some stuff together now. And it was just the best. I mean, to sing that music every night, and those audiences were obsessed with that show, and the cast was a delight, and it was, I mean, it really was like warm pie. I mean, it was the musical equivalent of it. And I went to, I got to go back the following summer and do it with the great Shoshana Bean. And then I did it this last, when Broadway reopened, I did it with Jennifer Nettles. I mean, it's I would do it again in a heartbeat. I'd do it tonight. I mean, I would do Chicago and Waitress in rep this weekend, if you let me. I just have to remember to take off the tux and put on the scrubs at a certain point. But I love them. I love them both equally.
I love it. Growing up, you went to Stage Door Manor for how many years? Was it 7?
7 years, yeah.
All right. Who did you go with? Were there other people that we know that went to Stage Door Manor with you?
Oh God, yeah. In terms of people who kind of hit it big in this business, Sebastian Stan, Leah Michelle, Skylar Aston, Natalie Portman, Bryce Dallas Howard, Um, uh, Ansel Elgort was after me, but I like to say that we went there at the same time because it makes me appear to be younger. But it's a lie. And that my dear Dana Steingold, who is so brilliant as the Girl Scout in Beetlejuice right now, Jed Resnick from Avenue Q and Rent. I mean, there's a million people. It really was the basis and continues to be the basis of my kind of artistic awakening, my theatrical awakening. It's still my home away from home.
Did you have a favorite role that you played there? Like you said, out of all the 7 years, this was like my dream role.
Yes,
Like,
yes. My favorite role that I ever did at Stage Door Manor was I was Cinderella's prince in Into the Woods. So much so that when it was announced that it was coming to City Center for Encores, I said to my agent, "This is going to sound absurd, but I want you to submit to casting my tape from summer camp as my audition tape." Just to see how that goes over. Now, thankfully, she didn't do that because I didn't want to be completely banned from show business. But it is my absolute dream role. I would love to do that again. I got to do things there that, like, I played the Sid Caesar track in Little Me. There's a show called there's a great musical by George Stiles and Anthony Drew called Honk that Gavin Creel, funny enough, originated here in the States. That is a wonderful musical that I got to do up at camp. Yeah, the Pharaoh and Joseph. I mean, they were all. I mean, I played the grandpa in the A.R. Gurney's The Dining Room. For God's sake, I was pretty good. No, it was. I would go back to camp today. I would pack my bags and and go straight up to the Catskills again today if I could.
I love that. That's amazing. Okay, now there's Jersey Boys too. I know the role of Bob Gaudio. I mean, I remember meeting you early on when the tour was going out. I think that's one of the first times I met you
We've
in that.
known each other for so long, Richard. I was a baby. We were both babies.
Totally. You're really a baby though. No, but I remember being in that room. That role and that show has meant a lot to you, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's continued to. I don't even know how to describe it. It almost feels like I've never gotten away from it, and gladly. It's the role that I think I'm most associated with outside of Madam Secretary. I think because the songs, Jersey Boys, it was really interesting because there were all the people who grew up with the music of Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, who those songs mean so much to, just as standalone songs, because it's really the soundtrack of their life. But then there's that whole other generation that kind of forget that those songs existed pre-Jersey Boys, and they think of them as they don't even think of them as Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. They think of them as the Jersey Boys. And so the show kind of created another group almost. So it was a very weird thing to fit into, not weird, I mean, weird in a good way, but it was an interesting thing to fit into people's lives in different ways. That show meant so much to people. The music meant so much to people. And it was like lightning in a bottle. I mean, like you said, you remember being in that room, that first, I think you were there at that. It was like the final dress or press
Yeah.
day for the tour. It was like the summer they had won the Tony for Best Musical, and we were the first company being shipped out to the world. And I was 20 years old, and I felt like I had the world in the palm of my hands. I mean, it was like it was such an incredible experience. And it continues to, when I do concerts, and I'm about to do the Cafe Carlisle this fall. And when I do concerts like that, whether they're small and intimate like the Carlisle, or when I do bigger stuff in performing arts centers around the country, when I get to the end of the show and we get to the Jersey Boys section, and that intro to Can't Take My Eyes Off You starts, or the beginning of Oh What a Night starts, people get, I see all the phones come out, people stand up. It's a I've used this word a lot today, but it's a visceral experience. There's something magical about those songs that somehow I've been lucky enough to be associated in the timeline of these songs. It continues. Jersey Boys continues continues to be a gift. You know, I'm done playing the role of Bob Gaudio, but it continues to be a part of my life in a way that is not just memories. It's a very current thing for me. When I go and do concerts and I sing that music, it all comes right back, you know. So it's a
Okay,
lot.
so you got to work in the film. You did the tour. You did it in Las Vegas, and of course, you played Bob Gaudio for Clint Eastwood, where he directed you in that fabulous film. You must have so many fabulous memories of working with Clint Eastwood. Would you share one with the Broadway World audience?
Yes, he's the nicest man, the smartest director, great stories that to share. But I will tell you that there was a scene when we are pulling into the what's known as the sit down scene, which is the big scene with the mob where we are figuring out what to do about Tommy's death. And I'm sitting in the car with John Lloyd Young, who plays Frankie, sitting next to me. And we were in, I'm not a car person because I was born and raised in New York City, but it was some old car that car lovers, I'm sure, would drool over. I can barely operate like a Toyota Camry. Like, I don't know, even the most automatic of cars, I can't figure out. But this car, it had like a clutch and a thing. You had to do 8 moves all at the exact right time just to make the car move like an inch. And because it was like a 1958 something. And I don't know why they put me in the driver's seat. I don't know why Frankie wasn't driving. I don't know why, but they put me in this car, and the guy who is running the cars basically gives me a quick thing on how to do it. I'm like, okay, I'm sure I'll figure it out. And they yell action, and I'm supposed to drive just a little bit and then pull into this driveway, and that was a cut. It was just a quick entrance. And I start to do it, and the car stalls. And that's okay. It's okay. It's going again. Don't cut. Don't cut. We'll do it right again. Okay. Do it again. The car stalls. I don't know what's happening. The third time they yell cut. And in the rear view mirror, I see Clint Eastwood start from down the road, start running after the car. I'm like, oh God, no. And the assistant director, the AD was standing there going, oh no. I said, what? He's like, he has one pet peeve. It's when cars don't work, and he has a thing about it. It's not going to be good. And he comes up. He's like, "What's wrong?" It's like, "Oh, I don't really know how to work the car. You just do this, you do that, and you do that." Okay, yeah, I got it. Great. Okay, cool, great. Thanks so much. And I don't know. I had a guardian angel looking out for me because finally, after Clint basically scared the living you know what out of me, it worked. But it is a very scary thing to look in your rear view mirror and see Dirty Harry coming at you, trying to just get his film shot, especially because he's known for making films ahead of schedule and under budget. And you're thinking, oh God, I'm the reason why he's not going to make this work.
My very short car scene is going to make this
That's
go into
right.
2 weeks. But you loved working with him, right?
He was the greatest. He was the greatest. I learned so much from him. He has such a respect for actors. He has such respect for crew. He hires the smartest people in the business and then lets them do their job. There's no ego. There's no micromanagement. It was the greatest experience. You know, the great Mike Doyle, who I know you know, who played Bob Crew in the movie. One day we were on set, and Mike had worked in a lot of television and film through the years, and it was my first studio film. And I turned to Mike and I said, we were on a golf cart one day, we were driving to the set, and I said, so how does this compare to, you know, all the things that you've done in your career? And he said, oh, this is it. He said, this is the last of this. You will not get better than this. And I took that to heart, and he was right. It was a magical experience to film it on the Warner Brothers lot and to walk onto a soundstage. And outside the soundstage, you see all the plaques of the other films going back to the 30s that have filmed on that set. It was I've been very, very lucky in my career to be part of projects that mean a lot to people. You know, I haven't been a part of the edgiest, most artsy things. I haven't been a part of the most the things that all the cool kids go to. but I get to be a part of projects that stay in people's hearts, whether it be Jersey Boys or Madam Secretary or Waitress in Chicago. I'm very, very lucky.
Well, we're just about out of time, but I want to ask you about Madam Secretary. You're known to millions of fans for that. I mean, favorite memory of that too? You must have so many of working on that show.
Oh, I mean, I could talk for hours about Madam Secretary. It was the greatest gift I've ever had. You know, it was a group of actors. We were all adults, and there was no drama on set. You got to walk on set every day with this collection of people that I had idolized, and I got to play with them. Taya Leone and Bebe Neuwirth and Patina Miller and Jeffrey Aaron and Sebastian Arcellus and Sada Ramirez, and I'm forgetting a million people, but and the way it was produced and directed, Eric Stoltz and Morgan Freeman and Laurie McCreary and Barbara Hall, our creator. I mean, it's a show that, interesting, there was an article that came out in the New York Times kind of right in the beginning of the first year of COVID, or towards the end of the first year, I should say, about a lot of people had gone back and rewatched it because they hadn't watched it in real time, but we were all sitting around in that first year of COVID, people watched it on Netflix and they fell in love with it. And there was an article in the New York Times how we didn't give this show enough credit when it was on the air, and all this stuff. I said, well, oh gee, great, thanks. But no, it's true. I mean, people are now discovering it for the first time. They're rewatching it. People still come up to me about that show because it was so smart, and it did the thing that I think is most important in art, which is it respects the audience intelligence. It treats the audience like a smart person. It doesn't play down. And I think we worked really hard at doing that for 7 years, and we succeeded most of the time. And I think because of that, not just great memories for me creating it, but I think a lot of people have great memories of watching that story unfold over time and felt very inspired by it.
Well, like I said, you brought a lot of joy with Madam Secretary, with Bull, with your concerts, your albums. My final question is, I know you're new to Chicago, but if you could sum up the best part of the experience so far with working on Chicago, Erich, what is it for you?
Oh my God. At this day, it seems to change every day. I would say, I'd say the people, because when you walk on that stage, that's an unforgiving show. You are naked on that stage, right? There's no set, there's no magic, there's no effects. The orchestra's on stage. It's not even a very overly amplified show. There's no sound effects on the microphone. It's an unforgiving show, and you got to be ready, willing, and able to give your all and let it live on the stage. And I'm only able to do that because of the people that I share the stage with, the people that got me to that stage. That is the definition of an ensemble show. It's the reason why everyone's names are introduced during the bows at the end of the show by the conductor. Everyone has their name said out loud because they deserve it.
Well, it's a show where everybody makes theatrical magic, old school theatrical magic. So, well, once again, Erich Bergen has stepped into the role of Billy Flynn in Chicago now through September 11th. Erich, thanks for dropping by, my friend. I could talk with you forever.
I'm sure we will. I'll see you at Joe Allen in a few hours.
You got it, my friend. Everybody stay safe. Go see a musical, see a play, and go see Chicago. Take care, everybody, and stay safe. Good to see you.